Hello, my name is Valerie Stevens, and I am a storyteller. I do a lot of other things as well, but I love telling stories. These stories are what I call freedom stories. These stories are all about American history and that time called slavery. One of the things that I like to talk about is the stories of this country are not necessarily in those who were famous. The stories of this country are about those who were not famous and were creative, courageous, brave, and wanted to be free. So, before I start to tell stories, I always start with a song. And the song that I sing, of course, is a song that comes from West Africa. This song is sung in Yoruba. This is a welcome song. In English, it means welcome and peace to you. Amen, amen. And it goes like this. Vanga alafia, ashe, ashe. Vanga alafia, ashe, ashe. In English, it sounds like this. Welcome and peace to you. Amen, amen. Welcome and peace to you. Amen, amen. The first story I'm going to start to talk about and tell you is a story about the first rebellion in this country. Now, a lot of people will say, well, of course, that was the Revolutionary War in 1776. And I say, oh, no. There was another one. And it happened in 1739. It happened in South Carolina. It is called the Stono Rebellion. Now, the Stono Rebellion, during that time in South Carolina, there were slaves and slave owners. There were many, many slaves. You see, there were more slaves than there were slave owners, which made the slave owners very frightened. Meanwhile, there was a group who had been brought from Central Africa. That's about all we know about them. And they gathered together and they decided, they had heard that there was freedom in Florida, south in Florida. And if they could just get to Florida, they would be free. You see, Florida at that time was ruled by Spain, and Spain didn't have slavery at that time. So this group gathered together, and among themselves, they came up with a plan. The plan was, on September 9th, which was a Sunday, and all the slave masters and their families were in church, and there were no guns allowed in church. That morning, they would gather together, get the guns, and move and run towards Florida. Well, September 9th came. That morning, they waited. Church began, and all of the slave masters went to the church. The slaves got together, gathered up all the guns they could find, and they started to move and move towards Florida, going south. Their plan was to gather folks together using the drum. Use the drum to make signals and tell everyone to gather, and that's exactly what happened. By late morning, that 35 became over 100. And they made it as far as what was called the Stono River. There, they were stopped by the slave masters, and a battle ensued, and all of the slaves who had run away were killed. But the white folks were scared. If that happened once, they needed the slaves, free labor. What were they going to do? So they passed 3 laws. The first slave acts. 1, From that time on, slaves would never be able to gather together in groups. 2, from that time forward, slaves would never be able to learn how to read or write. 3, from that time forward, slaves would never be allowed to play the drum. You see, the drum is very powerful, and it speaks. And they knew that drum was powerful. And that changed everything in the South. It's called the Stono Rebellion. And it happened September 9th, 1739. People will do what they have to do to be free. More stories about that later. I'm going to tell you a story about a married couple. I wonder if you've ever heard anything about them. Their names were William and Ellen Craft. William and Ellen Craft lived south in Georgia. They were both slaves. They were both actually owned by 2 different masters. They fell in love and got married. Now, William was a carpenter. He could make almost anything. And Ellen was a seamstress, a wonderful sewer of clothes. When they got married, they really talked about how important it was for their children to be free. And as they continued to talk about it, they decided they would do anything to make sure their children was free. And they thought about it, and they thought about it, and they thought about it, and William came up with a plan. He went and talked to Ellen about it, and he said, this is what we can do. You can cut your hair and dress up like a young white man. Ellen couldn't believe what he was saying. But you see, Ellen was very, very light-skinned. She didn't believe anything that could happen. And William said, I will be your servant, and we will take the train to freedom. Ellen looked at him and said, are you out of your mind? This is a crazy, crazy idea. But William was adamant. He knew in his mind and heart that it could work. And so that's what they did. They waited until Christmas Eve. Before it came, Ellen made a suit for herself, a man's suit. And she got a hat. But what she told him was this: I can't pass for a young white man. Listen to my voice. William said, don't worry about that. We will put a bandage around your face, and you won't have to talk. But look at my eyes. They'll look at my eyes and know that I was not a white man. We'll get you glasses, green spectacles, and you can wear them and they won't see your eyes. But wait, she said, I can't read or write. What am I supposed to do? William said, that's all right. I can write. We will tie your arm up in a bandage, and I will write for you. This was the most incredible thing she had ever heard. But she wanted to be free. She wanted her babies to be free. So as I said, she made the outfit. Christmas Eve, she cut her hair. She put on the suit. She put on the glasses. They put on the bandage on her face and on her arms and the hat. And they waited until late, midnight. They opened the door to their cabin, and it was snowing. They got to the edge and stepped to the door, and Ellen started to cry. No, she said, no, I can't do this, William, I can't do this. William put his arms around Ellen and hugged her tight. And he said, "We have to try." And that's what they did. They traveled that evening, that night, into the morning, and first daybreak, they were at the train station. They had gotten tickets from the money they had saved from his carpentry and her seamstress. And he waited. William had to go into the back. Ellen went in the front car. She stood there at the door, and as she stood there, a white man came up to her. He was the master who owned the plantation next to where she lived. Her heart started to beat. Da-da, 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 da-da. She was so scared. But the man didn't say anything to her. He got on the train, and so did she. She sat down next to the window in the front car of the train and looked out the window. Master Man, who had come in, he sat down across from her. She continued to look out the window. Master Man said, "Excuse me, how are you today?" Ellen's heart beat hard. Ba-boom, ba-boom, ba-boom. She didn't say anything. Master Man looked and turned and said, "Didn't you hear me? I said, how are you doing today?" Ellen didn't say anything at all. Her heart was about to burst out of her chest. Ba-boom, 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 ba-boom. Another master man came down and sat as well, and he saw what was happening, and he said, "Excuse me, can't you see this young man can't talk?" Master Man looked at her. "Excuse me," he said. Ellen said nothing. She sat on that train among white people dressed as a white man for 1,000 miles. William would come and bring her her food, but then he would have to go back into the back. She sat alone there, pretending to be something that she was not. Finally, they got to Philadelphia. William came out, and he stood waiting for her to come out. And a man came by watching, and he was in a wagon, and he saw William waiting, and he said, "Excuse me, are you a slave?" William said, "Yes, sir." The man said, "Oh, no, you're not now. There are no slaves here in Philadelphia. You can go on. You don't have to wait for a master anymore." William said, "Thank you, sir." And then he smiled. Well, he waited, and here comes Ellen, dressed in the hat, all wrapped up, arm wrapped up, with green glasses on, and they went to one of the stations on the Underground Railroad. Have you heard about that? Oh, my goodness, there are so many stories about the Underground Railroad. Well, they stepped in the building, and they went and asked if there was somewhere where they could go to the bathroom. And the man said yes. Ellen took her bag and went into the bathroom, and William waited out. Inside, Ellen opened her bag, took out this beautiful freedom dress. She took off the hat, she took off the glasses, she took off the bandage, and she took off the other one. She looked at herself in the mirror, and she smiled because she realized for the first time in her life, she was free. She had a little bonnet that she had, and she put the bonnet on and went back out to be with William. The man who was in there looked. He said, what happened to that little white man that went in there? Ellen and William looked at each other. They started laughing because they were free. They left Philadelphia and they came to Boston, Massachusetts. They lived in Newton. There's a place over there in Newton. If you go to that house, there's a sign saying this is where William and Ellen lived. But then it got real dangerous in Boston because, you see, there was a law that said no matter if you were free, the man who called himself your master could come north and take you back to slavery. William and Ellen had nothing. They wanted nothing to do with that. And so they left Boston and they went to London. In London, they had 3 children. They went to England. They wrote a book. The book is called Many Thousand Miles Gone. Well, after slavery ended in the United States, they came back from London. And do you know where they went? Everybody wonders why, but I bet you know why. They went back to Georgia. Yes, they went back to Georgia because that was their home. There they had 5 kids, and they were all born in freedom. This is our story. Believe it or not. Many years ago, I had the opportunity to perform in a play about Harriet Tubman. I played Harriet Tubman. I played Harriet Tubman for 7 years. I actually have had an opportunity to meet some of her descendants. During that time, I learned a game. This game and song has 2 meanings. And I found out a lot of the songs and movement from that time, slavery, had 2 meanings. There was one meaning for the owners, but there was another deeper meaning for those who were enslaved. This is a children's game. It's called Juba. Juba this and Juba that and Juba kill the yellow cat. Well, Juba. Juba this and Juba that and Juba kill the yellow cat. Juba. We hit the wheat, they give us the husk. We bake the bread, they give us the crust. We cook the meat, they give us the skin. And that's how my mother's troubles began. Well, Juba. Juba this and Juba that and Juba killed yellow cat. Well, Juba. Massa pick his own lady. Massa sell the bald-headed baby. Nobody knows but the wind. And that's where my mama's troubles began. Well, Juba. Juba this and Juba that, Juba kill the yellow cat, Juba. Ah, Juba this and Juba that and Juba kill the yellow cat, Juba. Juba this and Juba that and Juba kill the yellow cat, Juba. Even in games, there are messages. Even in games, there is truth. Well, I'm going to tell you a story. I'm going to make it a little short. This story is about a remarkable man who was born into slavery. This man's name was Henry Brown. Now, some of you might have heard of this man, a fantastic man who had a wonderful, graceful way of speaking. Henry had learned how to read and write, even though it was illegal. He taught himself. One of the things, as he learned to read and write, he would read about freedom in various books. and papers and pamphlets. There was a secret society where he lived of abolitionists. Do you know what abolitionists are? Abolitionists worked to end slavery and help those who were enslaved to be free. Now, where he lived, there was a secret society of abolitionists, and Henry knew some of them. Henry really wanted to be free, and he reached a point where he would do almost anything to be free. And so he came up with an idea. He was a very slight man. Henry was about 5 feet tall. He decided, with help of the abolitionists, that he would make a box. A small box. And he would get in the box and have it nailed shut and be mailed to freedom. Now, nobody had ever done anything or heard about anything like this before. It sounded like it was almost too incredible to work. But Henry, his desire to be free, he knew it would work. And so they created a box this size. Henry got in the box. In the box, he took a small flask of water. He took a bag of biscuits, and they nailed the box shut with him in it. Inside the box, there was a small air hole so that he could get air out of it. On the top of the box, they said, "Fragile, this side up." And they did it. Henry got in the box, and if you've ever mailed anything, you know that it was never the right side up. The box was turned completely upside down. Henry stayed in that box for 27 hours. That box took him by wagon, boat, train, wagon, train again. 27 hours later, he got to Philadelphia. There was supposed to be someone there who could unnail the box, and if they weren't there, Henry didn't know what he was supposed to do because, you see, he couldn't see what was going on. He trusted in faith and his desire to be free. But sure enough, 27 hours later, 3 men went and got the box and took it where he would be free, and they took the top out. Henry slowly stood up, and he smiled because he was free. Henry left Philadelphia, and you know where he came? He came to Boston, too. Until the same Fugitive Slave Act, when they were snatching people off of Beacon Hill and taking them back to slavery, started, and he left there, and he went to London. There, he became a well-known speaker about ending slavery. When slavery ended, he came back, and he would travel around telling about what had happened to him and what he did to be free. As he got older, Henry moved to Canada, and there he's buried in Toronto, Canada. You ever wonder what it felt like not to be free? I wonder what you might do if you were not free. This is my story. Believe it or not. I'm going to start this story with a song. This song is a song that was sung during slavery. It was sung on the dawn of the first day of the new year. So when the sun was coming up on January 1st, this song was sung in the hopes that slavery would end that year. It is a call and response song, and it's called O Day. And it goes like this. O day, yonder come day. O day, yonder come day. O day, yonder come day. Day done broke in my soul. Yonder come day, 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 yonder come day. There was a time in that sweet homeland called Africa that there were people who had the power of flight. They'd put out their arms and whisper the magic words, and their bodies would move up, 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 until the whole sky was filled with beautiful bodies flying around and around. Oh, the people who could fly were very happy in the homeland, as were the people who couldn't. But then came that time called slavery, and those folks who called themselves slave catchers, they came to the homeland and they gathered together the people who could fly with the people who couldn't. You see, they couldn't tell the difference. And they chained them hand to foot, hand to foot, hand to foot. They put them in the bottom of these hell ships called slave ships, hand to foot, hand to foot. Hand to foot. This journey, this middle passage was so bad that the people who could fly forgot the magic words that moved them up through the sky. Hand to foot, hand to foot, hand to foot. They were taken to a place called the New World, but it really wasn't new at all. There, they were forced to work on these huge farms called plantations. One day, on one plantation, the day was hot. The sun beat down on the earth until it cracked open in its own dryness. Now, there was a woman working in the fields. Her name was Sarah. Sarah was carrying her baby on her back, and Sarah's baby began to cry. Hush, baby, hush. Please, baby, hush. But the baby was hungry. Hungry babies cry. Hungry babies are supposed to cry. Hush, baby, hush. Please, baby, hush. Now, there was a man in the field called himself Overseer. Overseer said to Sarah, shut that baby up. If you don't shut that baby up, I will whip you. Hush, baby, hush. Please, baby, hush. Baby hungry. Hungry babies cry. Now, the overseer, he had a whip that he carried along his belt. He took that whip off his belt and hit Sarah on her leg, and she fell down into that parched soil, and blood ran from her leg in that dirt. Now, there was an old man with a long gray beard. His name was Toby. Old man Toby, remember the words that moved people up through the sky. He ran over to Sarah and he said, daughter. Sarah looked up at him and she said, Father, please help me. Old man Toby with a long gray beard, he bent down and whispered the magic words. And a bunch of other words that sound like whispers and sighs. Sarah slowly stood up. She put her arms out. She took one foot and put it out on the air. And it stayed. She took her other foot and she put it out on the air. And it stayed too. And slowly Sarah's body remembered what it felt like to fly, and it moved up, up, up. Everything in the field stopped. Baby stopped crying. Baby held on now. Overseer said to Sarah, come down here. Did she come down? She flew around that field and then off beyond the highest mountain over yonder. Well, that night, the one who called himself over told the one who said he was master what had happened in the field that day. Master said to overseer, if it happens again, you will take their place. Overseer got scared. He didn't want to work in the field like a slave. Nobody wants to work like a slave. Well, the next day was harder than the day before. Sun beat down on the earth until it cracked open in its own dryness. Now, one by one, the people who could fly fell down in that parched soil. And one by one, old man Toby with the long gray beard, he bent down and whispered the magic words, Yalla, kum dambe dambe. And a bunch of other words that sound like whispers and sighs. And one by one, the people who could fly started to move up, up, up into the sky until the sky was filled with beautiful bodies flying around and around. Overseer grabbed old man Toby and tied him to a tree. Said, you tell me those magic words. Old man Toby with a long gray beard, he began to laugh. When he laughed, those ropes dropped down from his body, and he too started to move up, up, up in the air. And then the people who couldn't fly, they ran after him, and they said, please, take us with you. Old man Toby with a long gray beard, he started to cry. His tears were like thousands of dewdrops on the dry, parched soil, and he said, I cannot take you with me. You must find your own way to that sweet land called freedom. And with that, he flew around the field one more time and then off beyond the highest mountain over yonder. Well, the people who could not fly, some of them found their way. Some of them took that magic path called the Underground Railroad. And when they got to that sweet land called freedom, they told their children about the people who could fly. And their children told their children about the people who could fly. And I'm telling you, it is your responsibility to tell your children about the people who could fly in that sweet land called freedom. This is our story. Believe it or not. Oh, day, yonder come day. Oh, day, yonder come day. Oh, day, yonder come day. Day done broke in my soul. Yonder come day.